All right, I'm back again. I just looked at the recording of that whole session, and what do you know? The audio was all messed up because I guess it recorded the system sound in addition to the microphone sound, so it just made this like infinite loop of echoes. And what do you know? Damn it, it's doing it again. All right, gotta mute myself here. I'm gonna figure it out eventually. So I feel like I owe it to everybody who may have been watching to go ahead and do another painting because you couldn't hear anything I was saying in the last one. So I'm going to do a quick landscape here. Maybe we'll do a mountain. So I'm going to create a few different layers. Sky, mountain, clouds, hills, and field. So we'll start with the field. That'll be our horizon here. Maybe we'll put it right about there using the rectangular selection tool. And we'll fill that with a green color like so. And then I'm going to go to the hills layer. And I'm going to use the airbrush just to put in some distant hills. I'll select a slightly darker color too. Put in some things that look like little distant trees. Let's go to the mountain layer. Let's use the mountain knife. And we'll pick a dark blue color like this. If you're just now tuning in, I was just saying how the last broadcast I did, I realized that the audio was all messed up after I watched the recording, so I apologize for that. Hopefully it's not messed up this time. I don't think it is, but I guess we'll find out. I am generally a pretty tech-savvy person, but with this Twitch thing, they don't really give you much room to test it out. You just gotta kind of go for it and hope for the best. So I'm using the mountain knife here to put in this mountain. Go to the sky layer, pick a sky blue, and fill it with that blue color. And let's just put in too much mountain here, I think. So let's go to that hills layer. Let's just delete that. We don't need those hills. Go to that mountain layer, turn on preserve transparency. Let's select the chalk brush and polypay wool. Pick like a light color here. Maybe we'll do like a brown mountain today. Didn't get the paper there. Let's try that again. So we'll have the light coming from the right side here. And I'm going to pick a lighter blue color. Maybe we'll put in some brighter browns too. Just want to make it look nice and chunky, like salsa. We want to use the coarse oily blender to blend it a little bit. And I don't want to overblend it though. Let's set that into the distance by reducing the opacity. I'll create a new layer for mist. Put in like a light blue color near the oops, grab my palette there. Put in the light blue color near the bottom. Let's go to the sky layer. Let's add a little bit of that light blue near the bottom of the sky as well. And we'll add some darker blue up here towards the top. Let's go to the field layer, turn on preserve transparency, pick a lighter green. And pick a darker blue-green, put some of that towards the bottom. We'll use a lighter green, and let's say we're going to have a vanishing point off here to the side. We'll have some lines that kind of converge there at that vanishing point. And we'll put in some shadows as well that follow those same lines more or less. Let's blend that with the coarse oily blender. And the diffuse blur blender as well. Feel free to comment in the chat room if you have any questions. Or you can just say hi if you want. I'm going to use the Distorto just to push away some of that stuff off of the edge of the canvas there. So we got a pretty good start. Let's add a layer above the mist. Call it trees. Let's be more specific. Let's call it trees far. And I want to use a brush that I created recently that's in the nozzle libraries. I haven't really used it for a painting yet, so let's find that. I believe it is in nature. Where is it? I probably didn't add it to this, so let's see here. Let's just go to load nozzle, far twigs, there we go. And let's add that to our nozzle library. Where did it go? There it is, far twigs. I want that to be with the nature stuff. There we go. This will be included in my custom workspace the next time I release it. Far twigs. Okay. So now we can see what this does. We want to select the image shows brush. It's called linear size P color. And then we can pick a color. Sample this dark blue and just make it darker than that. Turn off preserve transparency, and you can see we get these really cool distant tree patterns. So it works pretty good if you click with the mouse, because then you don't get too many. These are just going to be trunks. Makes quick work of painting trunks, that's for sure. And if you make your mouse bigger, you get bigger trunks. Okay, so I'll hide that now. Create a new layer. Far leaves is what we will call it. Let's use another image shows nozzle. Let's try leaf dabs. So I'm going to try the paint break brush. Actually, no, we'll use linear size P angle decolor. That's what it says to use. And you can just kind of tap and dab with your pen here. If you're wondering what kind of tablet I'm using a Wacom Cintiq 24, which has a built-in screen. So that's what you can hear me tapping obnoxiously on there. This will be the front trees. Let's add a layer below that too, which will be a little bit lighter. And let's go back to the far leaves layer, turn on preserve transparency. Let's pick a leaf color. We have our light coming from the right side here, so that's where we'll put our highlights for our trees. Okay, so those will be some faraway trees. Let's create a new layer in front of that. Call this mid trees. Pick an even darker blue here. And I'm going to keep using that same brush that I was using. Just going to make it bigger. Put in some trees in front of that. Turn on preserve transparency. Put some highlights on these trees as well. Let's add another layer. Let's call it mist. And use the airbrush to put in some mist. Except we want the right color. Sometimes you have to switch back to your main color when you're done working with your additional color, and I forget that a lot of the time. So here we go. Just makes that look more distant. And maybe we'll just paint over the whole trees just to set them back a little bit more. Let's add some clouds since we made a layer for that. Let's try the coarse smear blender jitter. So as I recall, go to the sky layer. If we paint, we can get some white here while we're blending. Doesn't get any quicker than that for clouds. And we'll blend that with the diffuse blur. Now let's set our mountain back into the distance a little bit. So we'll select the mountain, we'll go to Effects, Focus, Soften. And we'll blend it a little bit with a diffuse blur blender. Let's select the trees far. Let's just do all these tree layers. Merge them with Control E. And then we'll do that same Effects, Focus, Soften on that. And let's do that to the field as well. Okay, so we'll turn on Preserve Transparency for that field layer. And let's add a little more yellow-green up here. And blend it a little bit more with the coarse oily blender. And the diffuse blur. If you'd like to see me do more of these Twitch sessions, just feel free to leave me a comment via email or on YouTube or Facebook or even here, and let me know if there's certain topics that you want me to cover, or if you just like watching me paint every now and then, because it would be good to know if this is worth doing, if people are actually enjoying it and watching it. So let's add some texture to the field. I'm going to choose Select Layer Content to put a selection around the field. Create a new layer, turn off Preserve Transparency. In this layer texture, we'll change the composite method to multiply. We'll select a dark blue, and we'll use the sponge. And we can hide this selection by choosing Show Hide Selection, but it'll still be active. I'm going to paint with a smaller brush in the background. As I move into the foreground, I'm going to use a bigger brush. That way I get a texture that goes from small to large. And then I'm going to use the diffuse blur blender to blend horizontally near the horizon. And then as I get towards the foreground, I'm going to use a vertical brush stroke. That'll make it look like grass blades sticking up. And you can reduce the opacity of that to just blend it in a little bit better. Let's go to the mid-trees layer. Let's create a new layer. Let's use the detail oils to put in some distant tree trunks. I'll zoom in for that, I guess. And we'll need to deselect our active selection so that we can paint outside of that. So I'm going to use the detail oils to put in some lighter tree trunks here. Really just making this piece up as I go along, so, you know, sometimes I have to backtrack a little bit. When I'm doing a more focused YouTube video, I tend to plan things out more, and then I have a, you know, the most efficient order of painting things. So I might do all the trees together first and the mountain together. But when I'm painting organically, I'm just doing something for fun, or, you know, something that's not pre-planned. I tend to bounce back and forth a lot. So I might work on the trees, and then I might work on the clouds, and I might work on the grass, and back and forth and back and forth, with no real particular order to things. And that's the really cool thing about working digitally, is that you can do that. It's completely non-linear. You can move the layer order around, and you can work on a piece stop working on it for a couple years and come back to it and finish it. Let's add some dark trees too. Starting to look pretty decent now. I think I'm going to do a little work on the clouds with the coarse oily blender. So I'm going to go back to the sky layer. We're not actually using that clouds layer, so I'll just delete that. The clouds and the sky are the same layer. And I'm going to use a different paper texture. Let's just use basic paper. I'm just going to sharpen the top edges of these clouds by blending them. Helps you to kind of reshape the clouds too if you want. I'll blend over that with a diffuse blur. Okay. Don't know what to put in the foreground, so I'm open to suggestions here. Might put in a tree or something. That might be the easiest thing to do. So let's create a new layer. Let's call it trunk. And I'll use the rough ink brush for that. Select a dark blue. Let's have that tree come in from way over there. Trees are kind of tricky because if you want them to look realistic, you got to draw a lot of branches. All right, let's turn on preserve transparency. And we'll use dark brown color. We'll just block in some of that. And put a little dark back over the top. We'll use a lighter color there. And we'll put in some of the background color. That's often reflected on tree trunks. We'll use the coarse oily blender to blur that, or to blend that, I mean. That's how you get your nice bark texture. You can also use some sponge texture over that. And I'll use the detail oil brush. Just drawing a few little extra details here. Blend those a little bit with the coarse oily blender as well. And I think maybe we will, let's add a couple little spots here. These little knots stick out. And we'll blend those as well. And this tree we can put out of focus. We'll turn off preserve transparency. Go to effects, focus, soften. Don't want to put it too out of focus though. Just a little bit. And maybe we'll just put some random plants out here. We'll use a particle brush for that. Start with the plant brush. And we'll need to choose two colors, one for the shadow and one for the highlight. Let's test that and see. Let's make our highlight brighter so it stands out more. That looks good. So if you press down really lightly, you can get a stem. And if you use firmer pressure, then you can get the leaves. Turn on preserve transparency and we'll make our color darker. That way we can add some shadows to this on the shadow side. And these plants need a cast shadow as well, so we'll turn off preserve transparency and make a multiply composite method layer. We use the airbrush. Just put in a little bit of a shadow. And maybe there's a shadow from something completely separate over here. All right, let's add some effects to this. Going to create a new layer for vignette. That'll be a multiply composite method, and we'll use the airbrush with a dark blue just to go ahead and vignette all around the edges here. That brings the focus into the middle of the painting. Now it doesn't have to be that strong. You can reduce the opacity so you get something that you like. Usually more subtle is better. Let's create a new layer for overlay. Make that an overlay composite method. Select orange and fill. And then we'll save. And that just makes it a little safer to be able to use these masks, because occasionally when you create a mask and you save, it can crash Painter, and it's really not much of a hassle because you can easily get your artwork back even if it crashes. But just to play it safe, we'll go ahead and save. So I'm going to create a mask on that layer, select black, I'm going to select the airbrush, and if I paint with black in that mask, I can remove some of that effect there. And if I right click on that layer and choose apply layer mask, I can apply the mask. Didn't crash, we're looking good. I'm going to reduce the opacity of that layer, create another overlay, make that a multiply composite method. We'll choose blue this time and fill it with that blue. Create a mask for that, select black and use the airbrush to mask away that anywhere where we don't want it. So I think that's starting to look pretty good. I'm going to right click on that layer and choose apply layer mask. Reduce the opacity of that a little bit. And then I'm going to zoom in. Let's just play with these plants a little bit to help them fit in better. I'm going to choose select layer content, create a new layer, hide that selection, call it plant tint. Whoa. Sorry, my phone is going off. There's an Amber Alert, and it doesn't matter if you're recording or not. People need to know that kids are being abducted. So, if you are in the Seattle area, keep a lookout. All right, so anyways, on that plant tint layer, we're going to choose multiply, and we're going to select the airbrush, and we'll choose like a more reddish color. And we'll choose kind of a blue-purple color, and we'll put that on the opposite side. And we'll reduce the opacity till those blend in a little bit better. They look good a little bit darker like that. And maybe we will put the shadow a little bit darker. I'm just going to make it pretty big here so we can see it. So I think I'm going to call that finished. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this Twitch broadcast. If you enjoyed this, be sure to comment on my Facebook page or send me an email or send me a message on YouTube or Twitter or somewhere and let me know that you enjoyed watching this and you want to see more. And I'll try to do more of these with some more notice, of course. And I think that after trying that first drawing, which was kind of random, and then trying this landscape that was a little more focused, I'll probably try to do more focused things like landscapes and portraits and still life and other particular subjects. So if you want to see more of my work, you can check me out at youtube.com/AaronRutten or my website aaronrutten.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.